Greetings, booktubers. Welcome back to Grammaticus Books. And today we're talking Robert E. Heinlein, and we're talking his novel from 1963, Podkayne of Mars. And did Robert E. Heinlein just lay an egg with this book, Podkayne of Mars? And unfortunately, the answer to that question is yes, he did. And I say that with a heavy heart because I am a giant Robert E. Heinlein fan. I love the Dean of Science Fiction, as you may notice from the preponderance of Robert E. Heinlein books behind me here on the shelves. And I've probably reviewed more Robert E. Heinlein books on this channel than any other author, with the possible exception of Robert E. Howard. And I've given all of his books that I've reviewed here so far positive reviews. I even gave Time Enough for Love, one of his most controversial novels, a positive review. I did bring out that he does push that novel. He does push the theme of that novel way too far at the end of it. But prior to him going off the rails in Time Enough for Love, it is a brilliant book. He is my favorite science fiction author from the golden age. So it does pain me to have to say that this book is actually a bad book. Unlike Time Enough for Love, where you just have a portion of it where it goes a little wonky, this book is pretty much bad from cover to cover. So let's get into it. But before I get into it, let's talk real briefly here about this copy I'm holding in my hand. This is a Berkley Medallion edition, science fiction edition. From 1982, it's a 15th printing, and it's got a pretty decent cover here by Carl Lundgren. You get a blow-up of the cover on the back with Potty Fries, Potty's her nickname, holding a fairy here on the surface of Venus, which is where the novel winds up. Now, I'm going to go into the plot of this book, and I'm going to go into it in a lot of detail. There will be spoilers, and there will be more than just minor spoilers going forward. And the reason there's going to be more than minor spoilers is because in order to go into why I think this is a bad book, I'm going to need to go into it in a level of detail in order to explain that is going to be very much a spoiler review. And I'm going to go into the ending of this book. Yes, I'm going to give away the ending to this book because the ending is atrocious, and we're going to go through the ending in detail as well. And I will put up another spoiler alert right before I get to the ending, if for some reason you would want to read this book and you don't want it to be spoiled. Although I'm going to tell you right now, I don't recommend it. I think it would be a waste of your time to read this one, which is the purpose of this review and why I'm going to throw in all these spoilers. But that's it. Let's jump into it. Podkayne of Mars, what is the plot? Well, the plot starts with the main character, Podkayne Fries, or known as Potty Fries. She is a 15-year-old girl living on Mars with her parents and her younger brother, Clark. And the entire story, or I should say 95% of the story, is told through her viewpoint via her diaries. So Robert E. Heinlein takes a pretty bold step here as a male author, and he steps into the mind and personality of a 15-year-old girl who's coming of age and tells the story from her perspective. And it's pretty ambitious. Unfortunately, I don't think he does it very well in this book, but you start off with Potty with her parents on Mars. Her younger brother is Clark. He's 11 years old, and Clark is quite simply the most brilliant person in any room that he walks into. He is an absolute genius, and he's a bit of a sociopath. He can hack into systems that are allegedly unhackable and change things that aren't supposed to be changed. He can outthink anybody, and he has almost no inhibitions on what he will do in order to get his way. And in my opinion, he is a self-insert by Robert E. Heinlein of who he would have liked himself to have been as an 11-year-old, and he's stuck himself into the story, which is part of the problem with the book as well. So Potty and her brother Clark are on Mars when their parents decide they're going to take him on a trip to Earth. And they're very excited about this trip, but then a mistake happens. A mistake at the nursery on Mars where her parents have put 3 zygotes into cryostorage. They're mistakenly brought out of cryostorage. They are then matured before their time by mistake, and now her parents have 3 new kids that they have to deal with, and they can no longer take Clark and Potty on this trip. In steps our next main character, our last main character here in the story, Uncle Tom. Uncle Tom comes to the rescue. He says, you know what? I was planning to go to Earth. I'll take Potty and I'll take Clark with me. I've got tickets on this luxury starliner that is sailing across the solar system, destination Earth, with a buy stop in Venus on the recreation planet of Venus, and he saves the day. So Uncle Tom then loads Clark and Potty onto the starliner, and they travel across the solar system, and they stop on Venus and go down onto the surface of Venus. Now, apparently nobody ever told Robert A. Heinlein, or perhaps it wasn't discovered in 1963. If somebody knows, let me know down in the comment section, that the average surface temperature of Venus is 870 degrees, because you have this outdoor civilization. People are going outdoors. There's flora and fauna existing on Venus. It's ridiculous. But they go down onto the surface of Venus. Venus is a Las Vegas-like libertarian paradise in which there are almost no laws, almost anything goes, and extreme capitalism is the word of the day here. This takes you all the way through page 145 of a 175-page novel. It is essentially just a travelogue. From page 1 until page 145, when they've arrived on Venus and are just going around and visiting casinos on the surface of Venus, absolutely nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens. It is just an interstellar travelogue, and not a very good one. There is no plot development. There's no hint of a plot. They're just traveling around on this Starliner. They arrive at Venus, and then they're partaking of these casinos and other entertainments on Venus all the way to page 145. At page 145, Robert A. Heinlein realizes that he has to put a plot into the book, and he shoehorns a interstellar espionage plot into the last 30 pages of the novel. And it just really, really feels like it was jammed in, like it was an afterthought, because I do believe that, in fact, it was an afterthought that is shoehorned into the back end of the novel. So what happens on page 145? Well, to summarize it, it turns out that Uncle Tom is a diplomat on a secret mission to negotiate a treaty between Earth and Mars. And this treaty negotiation is going to take place on Venus. And then, to make a long story short, or to make a short story even shorter, I should say, both Tom, Clark, and Potty wind up being kidnapped by an immensely obese woman who is now going to blackmail Uncle Tom by threatening to murder the two younger kids, his niece and his nephew, if he doesn't do certain things at these negotiations in order to gain her money. Now, why is Uncle Tom here negotiating this treaty? Why is this treaty so secret? What is this secret diplomatic aspect to the story going on here? Don't know. Robert E. Heinlein never bothers to explain it in any detail, and it's not important because it has almost no impact on the plot, other than it's a reason to get them there and a reason for this lady to kidnap them. Why is this lady kidnap them? How is she going to use Tom's participation in these treaty negotiations in order to enrich herself? And how has she gone about and done all this? Don't know. He never explains it in any detail, and it's not really relevant anyway because it has no long-term bearing or impact on the end of the book or the plot trajectory going forward. It's merely an excuse for her to kidnap the three of them, put them out into the middle of the Venusian outback, inside of what turns into basically an escape room in this little cabin. And that's the last 30 pages of the book. And at this point, you have Clark take over. Potty, when she's coming out here, she lets it known to the viewers, to the readers, via her diary that she wants to be the first female Starliner pilot in the solar system, that is her ambition. It's a little bit of a feminist bent to it that Robert A. Heinlein is taking in 1963. You think this is going down a good, pro-feminine line of plot development. And then he takes that and he turns it 180 degrees. And by page 140, she wants to just raise kids in a nursery and change diapers. I kid you not, that's where he goes with that aspect of the plot line. And then it all gets jettisoned anyway, with just Potty and Clark stuck in this cabin that turns into an escape room with this immensely obese woman who is blackmailing Tom via his niece and nephew. So she has two fairies with her. That's where the fairies come into the story. The fairies play prominently in the back blurb here, but they don't appear until almost the end of the book. And there are two fairies that she's using as guards here in her cabin out in the middle of the outback. One fairy is a female fairy. The fairies are about 2 feet tall. They have wings, and they have very razor-like teeth and claws and are nasty little things. And the female fairy, also has a baby with her, a female fairy baby that she's nursing, is guarding Clark and Tom and keeping them in one room of this cabin. The other fairy is the male fairy, and it is an addict to fairy dust that the woman gives to it each night in order to feed its addiction. But when she gives it the fairy dust, it goes into homicidal rages, and she has to lock it in a cage to keep it from killing everybody in the cabin. If Tom doesn't do what she wants, she's going to lock Poddy and Clark in the cage with the male fairy and then give it the fairy dust and let it do what it's going to do. And Clark has figured out that whether Tom is successful or not, that this woman is going to kill them come the next morning. So he tells Poddy they have to escape. They have to escape at night, because at night is going to be their best chance. The reason it's going to be their best chance is because the woman won't be able to let the male fairy out of the cage to come after them, because it will kill everybody in the cabin, including her, while it's all doped up on fairy dust. So they're going to make their break in the middle of the night. What do then? They decide to lay down and go to sleep. I kid you not. They come up with this plan. They have to execute it that night because it gives them their best chance. And then they lay down and they go to sleep. They then wake up maybe an hour before sunrise, and Clark MacGyvers together a homemade slingshot that he uses in order to stun the female fairy, knocks it to the floor, it drops its baby fairy, and then Clark jumps over and stomps on its head until he crushes its skull and splatters its brains all over the floor. The baby fairy is now crying, and so in order to mollify it and shut it up, Clark takes it and puts it on top of the mutilated body of its mother in order to calm it down, because he's a sociopath. The woman in the other room hears the commotion, but it's just now sunrise. The male fairy is coming out of his pixie dust craze, and she has opened the crate to his cage. She comes storming into the room with a gun. Clark tackles her from behind, knocks her to the ground, and then twists her head around and snaps her neck. Yes, an 11-year-old boy snaps the neck of a 350-pound woman, breaks her neck like a twig, then takes the gun and shoots the male fairy, killing it, and they are now safe in the cottage. Except they have one problem. There's one more conspirator that they have to deal with. There is a man who pilots an air car who's bringing the supplies to and from this cabin out in the middle of the outback and on the surface of Venus, out in the far hinterlands. And they don't know when he's coming. So Clark rationalizes they should split up. If they split up, when he comes in and sees that they've escaped, he can only chase one of them, and that will give one of them a chance to get away. This is kind of stupid. You've got the gun. He doesn't know that the cabin has been taken over. You just sit in the cabin, wait for him to walk through the door and shoot him, and then take the air car, and you both fly out. But whatever. So they both split up. And at this point, I need to mention that Clark has smuggled an atomic weapon into the cabin. Yes, Clark has stolen an atomic weapon when he was on the cruise liner. It's a little bit of a long story. He's stolen a 1.5 kiloton weapon that weighs 3 pounds, and he has smuggled it into a false compartment that he built into the bottom of his duffel bag that the woman missed when she searched him when he got kidnapped. And he has taken this bomb out, this atomic bomb, and he has armed it and set it with a timer to go off, so that in case their escape attempt fails, that they will still get the revenge posthumously when the bomb goes off and kills all of their captors and takes them all out in an atomic explosion. So this bomb has been armed. Now at this point, Clark goes his way out of the cabin, Poddy goes her way. They're going their separate ways in order to split up, which is idiotic. And Poddy turns around and comes back to the cabin because she has to save the baby fairy that is sitting on top of its smashed mother's corpse. She grabs the baby, she runs out of the cabin, but she can't get far enough away from the cabin before the nuclear bomb goes off, the atomic weapon explodes, and it kills her, but she dies as she's wrapped herself around the fairy, protecting and saving the baby fairy. Except she doesn't die, because when Robert A. Heinlein wrote this story and he submitted that original ending to the editors hated it. They went back, they got into a big argument that went back and forth, but finally the editors won, and they made Robert A. Heinlein rewrite the ending of the book. So instead of getting killed, she only gets burned and mutilated horribly and is in a stasis cryo chamber being repaired at the end of the book. And at the end of the book, the diary switches over from Poddy Fries' diary, and now you get Clark telling the last 7 pages of the story, which is the add-on by Robert A. Heinlein that his editors forced on him. And frankly, those last 7 pages, although you can tell that Bob was pissed when they made him do this, those last 7 pages are actually the best 7 pages of the book. And it talks about Tom calling up Potty and Clark's parents back on Mars and chewing them out for being bad absentee parents. Never mind the fact that Uncle Tom is the one who took his niece and nephew with him on an international spy mission and put them into danger, used them as cover for his international espionage mission, and almost got them killed. And it goes off on absentee parenting and how women should be the main raisers of children in families. And that is how the book ends. And it is absolutely atrocious. It's atrocious from front to back. The writing isn't particularly good. And I do not recommend it. I would give it a 3 out of 10. So that's Podkayne of Mars. So why did Robert E. Heinlein write this book? How did this book get so bad? And I have an idea. I have a theory on it. And I think it has to do with the publication history. In 1959, Robert E. Heinlein writes Starship Troopers, which is just an absolutely phenomenal book, a seminal military science fiction book, although the bulk of that book is political discourse. And I enjoy the political discourse of that book immensely. A lot of people get taken by surprise by that. But it's a seminal book in science fiction history, and it's the last of his juveniles. And I would argue that, in fact, it is not a juvenile. It's more of an adult book. He follows that up in 1961 with Stranger in a Strange Land, which is absolutely adult new wave science fiction dealing with very adult themes of sexuality and liberalism in society. So that's the last book he writes before he writes Podkayne of Mars. And Robert A. Heinlein took a lot of heat. He took a lot of heat over Starship Troopers for some of the conservative viewpoints that were expressed in that book. And he took a lot of heat over Stranger in a Strange Land for pushing the bounds of what you could put in terms of adult themes into a science fiction book, particularly when he had been known prior to that for his juveniles, which are fantastic. And I think that Podkayne of Mars is sort of a half-hearted attempt by Robert A. Heinlein to revert back to his juveniles, which won him so much acclaim, in order to try to tamp down the heat that he was getting from Starship Troopers and from Stranger in a Strange Land, and go back to his roots, so to speak. But I don't think his heart was in it, and that's Podkayne of Mars. If you've read this book and you have an opinion on it, put it down in the comment section below. But with that, I'm going to wrap this one up, and I'm going to say take care, be safe, and I will catch you guys next time.